if your boy has a mobile phone or his friend has a mobile phone, you can almost guarantee that they've been exposed to pornography by the age of 11. You can always guarantee it, that they've been exposed to pornography by the age of 11. It's just saturated in those devices. That's why locking the devices down, having those technology agreements, holding off access to those mobile phones for as long as possible, or even better, providing distractions from technology. Your boy won't be on technology if there's something better on offer. It's often just a fill-in from boredom that you're on technology. And so it kicks in with those hobby clubs, whether it's model airplanes or motorbike riding club or mountain bike riding club, those sorts of things that can get boys out and involved. If they're doing something, especially with their dads, they're not going to be sitting at home playing games for hours on end. I can almost guarantee it. Also, even as simple as the card games. There's been a whole new generation of card games come out in the last probably 5-10 years because of Kickstarter, where people are able to crowdfund these new games. And so there's games that these boys love to play, like Exploding Kittens, for those that may have played that game. Or there's another one called Taco. What's there something about Taco? It's a throw burrito. Throw burrito. Last night I played Chook Chook, of all things. Why would I play Chook Chook? But yeah, those sorts of games. But those sorts of games, if the family is playing a game like that, boys, kids, both boys and girls, will gravitate from their bedrooms to the lounge room because they love things happening with the families, with the dads, with their mums. And yeah, those sorts of card games are amazing. But as I said, when the family is doing something like that, or dad and son is doing something like that, it distracts from screens, and screens come a very, very distant second when those sorts of things are going on. So let's look at what our boys are grappling with. There's 3 things that they're grappling with. They grow from what it means to be a boy to what it means to be a man, and that journey through adolescence that they take. Autonomy and independence. They're wanting to break away from their parents and experience what it now means to be a man themselves, and to experiment with that, what it means to be a man. Autonomy and independence. Also, the hunger to belong, be with. Now, you tie that in with testosterone, which is kicking in big time during these years, and boys horsing around, taking risks, doing things that may raise your eyebrows a little bit, is what they do. Testosterone kicking in causes them to do that sort of stuff and horse around and be boys. And I've watched it here as well. The other day I was walking by and some of the boys had built a jump. And other boys were in a go-kart. And they were going around their track and the bike was doing their jumps. And suddenly, boys being boys, decided, what would it be like if we could jump a bike over the go-kart as the go-kart goes under? Bit of a stunt. Now, back when I was a kid, yeah, we did those things too. But in today's day and age, with risk assessments and paperwork, whatever else, well, should they be doing that or not? My advice would be I'd rather boys be taking edgy. Maybe we could sort of say, don't jump over the go-kart, but just have that discussion. But even have that discussion around risk and just not sort of shaming them, but having that discussion around what they're doing and how we could do it better, maybe one way to go. But I thought at least these kids are out doing things outdoors. They've been stuck on a screen, exposed to who knows what. So there's a balance somewhere in the middle. And also, of course, there's this search for identity. The biggest thing that boys want in this day is, who am I? What am I? And, yeah, what can I do and where am I going to go and what does it mean to be a man. The search for their identity as a man is really important. These, as I said, coincide with brain, hormonal, physical, psychological and emotional changes, which creates quite a confusing time for a boy as all these things are going on. For girls too, but particularly for boys with the testosterone kicking in and things, it really does create a hormonal storm that creates, as I discussed in 2 sessions ago, creates confusion, forgetfulness, mood swings, aggression, all very normal for boys. So, what are we going to do? Here's Pastor Daron's 7 tips to raise our boys. Now, you might agree to disagree, whatever, but these are 7 that I've found are very helpful when it comes to raising our boys, especially as they move through those years from a kid to an adolescent and into what it means to be a young adult. So, number 1, don't shame them. As I said, when boys are being boys, horsing around, things happen, things go wrong. The worst thing we can do, but the natural thing to do, is to grab them and almost, what on earth are you thinking? And in doing so, we can quickly shame them by putting them down and yelling and losing it. And boys have a very clear understanding of when they're being shamed, and it does all sorts of internal emotional damage when they're being shamed. There was a story I was reading recently of 3 boys that got each got their dad's golf clubs, and during the holidays went down to the golf course, and they were pretty happy with these awesome golf clubs. And so they were out playing a bit of golf, and in the end they went into the clubhouse, and boys were boys, they were swinging those clubs inside the clubhouse. And so a wall got a hole in it somehow. A light bulb got broken. A few other objects and things got smashed, and holes and bits and pieces everywhere. And by the time the manager walked in, the place was a mess. He knew who the kids were. He phoned the dads. The first dad turns up in a Porsche. Red Porsche. Grabs the boy, yells at him, all red, yells at the manager, walks out, and both yelling at each other, the father and the son hop into the red Porsche and drive off. The second father that came, he was in a blue Lamborghini, and he did pretty similar. Yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of shaming, a lot of put-downs, but walked out, hopped in the car and drove off. The third dad drove up, and this dad sat down alongside the son. You could see them talking and, not yelling, but just talking and reasoning and understanding. And then the dad and the son left together, went down like a hardware store, brought the bits and pieces that we needed to make those repairs, and then came back and spent the next hour or 2 patching and replacing and straightening and doing what was needed to make it right. Now, my question is, which dad do you want to be? The first 2 or the last one? The first 2 was a lot of yelling, a lot of blustering, a lot of shaming. The last one was, yep, son, you've done wrong. You understand what you've done? Yes, Dad, I know. I didn't mean to, but it just happened. You know what I mean? And you have a bit of a chat about it, and they realise, they know they're in trouble. They know they've done wrong. They know that they feel the sense of shame already. There's no need to make it worse. And it's what I call grace-filled parenting. Yes, they know the boundaries. They know they've done wrong. They know that they've stuffed up. They're very aware of that. But grace-filled parenting, where the dad and the son do it together and repair together, I think is the better way to go. So try and find ways to come alongside and to seek to understand and to have that discussion. Andrew's the other day, Andrew and I do podcasts. If you haven't found them already, we've started doing podcasts of a theological father, a theological son. And he's got a different perspective to me sometimes, but he's like the next generation. So we discuss all things church and all things around these sorts of things. And we had, just recently, we did a whole podcast around Andrew Tate and what's going on there. And it's called The Soapbox. So if you go to podcast, look for The Soapbox, you'll find Pastor Daron and Pastor Andrew doing soapboxes once a fortnight. We're due to do one this week somewhere, so I don't know if you're going to get there or not, because he's doing big camp and I'm doing big camp. So we'll see how we go. But we've got the topic. Just now sit down and do the podcast. But Andrew said in that podcast that often we sat down and instead of yelling, we reasoned. And it wasn't at the event often, it was often later on when you're in the car and driving along the road. And there's something about, as I said the other day, about being side by side as a father and a son, or as a mentor and a son. I want to pause quick and say to those who are single mums, don't feel a failure. Please don't feel a failure, what I'm saying. That's where the 5 mentors kick in big time, and the church is the best place to find those 5 mentors, to be those father-like figures in your son. And I've got those father-like figures. My Chook Club president, Warwick, he's 92, but he's still my father-like presence. When I need Chook advice, or parenting advice, or advice about generally what's happening in my life, and he watches my Facebook, so he knows what I'm doing, and he knows when he needs to just give me a call and say, hey, come out for a cuppa, and we just have a chat. And he gives me some fatherly advice. And I still have those father figures in my life who I can go to and talk to for advice. And when you have both parents or when you're single parent, those father-like figures are really important. Number 2, let them know they're not stupid. They're just developing. This is a father-son talk often about what it means to grow into a man. And unfortunately, these father-son talks need to happen earlier in life because they're exposed to pornography by the age of 11. Most boys, 90% of boys have been exposed to pornography by the age of 11. Now, the thing is, the porn they're seeing is not what you call soft porn. It's violent porn. Absolutely violent porn. And the boys are taking their sexual scripts. Oh, I'm stepping on that. Don't step on that. Maybe go away. I was going to come back. We'll see how we go. I'll just push that in and push that in. Otherwise, I'll ask our tech people to come up here and, oh, there we are. We're back. There you go. Miracle. Thank you. We should thank our tech people down the back who are here for all our programs, doing a fantastic job. Much appreciated. We don't notice them. They sit there in their little tent and we don't notice them. That means they're doing a really good job. It's when we notice them that things are going wrong, but they keep things flowing, so well done. So, now where was I? It's that discussion along the road that is more important. They know they've done something wrong. They know it's going wrong. But you need to have that discussion with your boys, especially around the birds and bees and what it means to be a man earlier in life than what it was when I was a teenager. I got that discussion in the book when I was 13. It now needs to happen a lot earlier in life because of the plans that the enemy has for our boys, especially to bring them down. So having that discussion about what's going on and what's happening in their body, what's going to happen in their body, it's a really confusing, awkward time for them. But for Dad to say, I understand, I went through it too, and I'm here to help you through that journey, and let's do some stuff together, is a lot more reassuring for the boy than having no one to have that discussion with him, or him to hear from other boys and be ridiculed by boys because he doesn't know, is even more shameful than actually knowing. So know when to have those talks with the boy, and they're regular talks. For Andrew, it was often Lisa would say, "Hey, I noticed that this was happening with Andrew," and she'll give me the nudge, and I would know it was time to go to the footy. And it's the journey to the footy, and more important, the journey back from the footy. More important. Now, that was real football, by the way, not this rugby stuff. It was AFL. You can't be a Pratt unless you follow the Richmond Tigers. And so we all follow the Tigers, and it was a father-son thing to do. When the Swans were playing Richmond, it was our tradition to go to the footy. And if I got desperate, I'd go to a Giants game, or I'd go to a Swans game. Got really desperate, I'd go to a rugby game, but I'd rather not. But yeah, finding something that we could travel to together, do together, and those conversations, you don't want them to be awkward. You want them to come up casually as you're driving, and you just nudge the conversation there and allow the question to be asked and maintain a non-anxious presence. Give an honest answer, and yeah, that is what needs to occur. And a lot of journeying, whether it's on the farm, on the motorbikes, on the mountain bikes, or in the car, really important for sons. Or if you don't have the time for the journey, then find the time for a hobby, especially with the boys. Finding an engine, a small engine that you undo in the shed and you tinker with, or a car to do up together, or a motorbike that you buy and you build and do up and go riding together. Whatever the hobby is, for my son, I said it was poultry, and we both got involved in breeding and showing poultry, and so Andrew got to go down and sit with all the men, mainly. There was a few women there, but mainly men for some reason with poultry. And chook club nights and just sit around the fire and chat. There's something about sitting around a fire too and chatting. Find reasons. Some boys are pyromaniacs. I was just over there again at the junior tent, and they had to have a fire outside the tent, and they had to put a stick in the fire and wave the stick around. It's just a natural, almost tendency for boys to do that. But there's something about being around a fire, again, men and boys, and having that chat. Now, mothers, you need to have those chats too. Again, Andrew said that when Andrew got too aggressive with his mother, then I, as dad, would step in and teach him how to treat a woman. But also, there's discussions that women have with boys too, around some of the similar topics, but from a different perspective. But yeah, Dad stepping in when Andrew got too aggressive with Lisa, Andrew said was pretty powerful because it taught him what it meant to treat a woman right, and that aggression wasn't acceptable when it comes to women. So he thanked me later on because he said, "Dad, when you stepped in, it taught me that there was the boundary. I knew where the boundaries were, especially when it comes to treating women." That comes over time. Number 3, don't forget the loving names, especially when you get to the teenage and adolescent years. Often when they're a child, you have the nicknames, you have the terms of endearment, you have those sorts of things that you have with your boys. And often when they get to those awkward years, all those loving in terms of endearment go out the window. Now, I was always called in my family Daron. It's just shortened Daron, D-R-N. Daron was a term of endearment. I knew when I got told Daron, I mattered, I belonged, I was part of that family. And even today, Mum and Dad are both gone. When my brothers and sisters call me Daron, all those secure feelings from Mum and Dad and what we had still come flooding back. There is my identity, there is my belonging, there is me knowing I'm loved by using those terms of endearment for your kids, and don't stop using them, especially when they get to the teenage years. Number 4, nagging them is like shouting into a void. Lecturing and nagging and yelling doesn't work. The boys shut down. They don't hear a thing that you're saying. Paying attention and building rapport that comes over time. Timing of when you talk to your child. The tone of your voice. If you're really, really angry and you can't talk in a normal tone, then go to your man shed and come back later on when you can, especially dads. And also, I said, avoiding direct eye contact when you have to have some of those more serious talks, coming alongside rather than looking in the eye. Seems to work better with boys, and that's where the alongside doing stuff together works better. Number 5, I love this one. Make your home a safe place for family and friends. Your home should be a place, especially in the teenage years, where everyone is welcome, where relatives, in-laws and mentors are welcome to come and spend time. Make sure there are firm and loving boundaries, of course, but your children need to know, and their friends know, that your home is always a safe place to come home to, whatever's going on. We don't live in tribes like they did in the people of Israel, but our teens still need to be surrounded by good people and family who care about them and act as lighthouses. I love the term. Maggie Dent uses that term of our boys need lighthouses around them. That is the uncle, that is the mate, that is the grandfather, and other men that are there in and out of your home that are there for your boys. Lighthouses that bring light into their confusion, light into their darkness, and also brings them identity and understanding. When they see how their mentors act and react, it helps them find their place in that as well. And so almost sometimes those gatherings, whether it's around a fire or around a game or around a meal, are almost like rites of passage ceremonies without even saying they are, where the boys learn what it means to be a man by observing other men in the sphere of influence. So make your homes a safe place and make sure there's lots of lighthouses turning on and being there to show your boys how to negotiate what's going through and what's happening in their life and providing light and warmth for your boys. Number 6, marinate them in stories of good men. Both biblical stories, of course, and there's some great man stories in the Bible of what to do and what not to do. But also there's great men in society who have failed and then succeeded, or failed again and then succeeded. Stories like Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb, who failed and failed and failed and failed until he finally succeeded. And there's so many stories, both down through the ages, but also even present stories of some sporting heroes and others that you can latch onto, which are great stories that your boys can identify with. And Maggie Dent calls the idea of marinating them in those stories. I said yesterday, stories pass on identity. Stories give them a sense of understanding how these men negotiated life and the ups and downs of life, and it gives them a sense of what they can do and that they can succeed and be a man too. And all men are driven to succeed in one way or another, when it comes to life. So marinating them in stories of good men gives them morals and values, especially again if for whatever reason the dad is not present in the home. Stories give them those values and identities just by reading to them and giving them to read, and even good movies watched together are helpful as well. And then having a bit of a discussion, maybe even pausing, having a discussion, why do you think that happened? And having those discussions are helpful as well as they go through the movie. Number 7, love them as they are, not for what you think they should be. Love them as they are. Of course, have a discussion on what they should be, but you love them as they are. Every teen boy is yearning to be seen, really heard, and really loved, as he is not as we think he should be. They are way more vulnerable than we have been conditioned to believe. Often they're out there horsing around, but inside is still that boy searching for meaning, searching for relevance, searching for identity, searching for love and acceptance. We need to love and respect our sons, especially because sometimes they cannot love and respect themselves yet. Love and respect your sons because often they cannot love and respect themselves yet. As I said yesterday, give those 5 positives and then have that discussion around the 1 negative. We need to build our boys up, and our girls too, but we're going to talk about girls more tomorrow. And there's some slight different things I'll say about the girls. But there's the 7. Most of all, what I can see, and from my experience, it's being present. It's showing up. It's being available. It's being a mentor and showing your son what it means to be a man. And I guess that's what we're doing in men's ministry with the men's barbecues. It's just allowing men to be together. We're often going to we're going to do a motorbike one where they ride the motorbikes in. Those who've got a motorbike and kick the tyres. We're going to do a car one. Tony Knight, who's a good friend of mine, is about to retire. He's resource manager down in Melbourne. He's doing up a Mini. And he's been very public about doing up his Mini. So I've said towards the end of the year, he's going to bring the Mini up, either trailer it or driving. I said, your challenge is to drive it up, but if you can't drive it up, trailer it up. We're going to kick the Mini tyres. But then if you've done up a car, bring a car in and let's kick those tyres. Around a barbie, around a fire, and a devotional together. And just allowing boys and men to be men. And hopefully we will see a change in our boys down the track because they know who they are. They know who they are. They know what it means to be a man. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes of my time left. So do we have any questions? Now, I must say right up the front, I'm deaf. So if I walk up closer to you, it's because I'm trying to hear you. Unless you've got a microphone. Thank you. But not just today, but any questions. I know we've pushed pretty hard through the last 3 days as well. So any questions or comments or advice that you want to give? Or say, Daron, those things are wrong, I want to add this one to them. We have a mic available. So if you have something to offer or a question or a comment, hands up, I'll get a mic to you.
Thanks, Daron. I've always been curious about the rite of passage concept because I guess when you look back certain parts of history, different places, there was some kind of initiation of going and hunting on your own or going and surviving on your own or something. When we're obviously not in that time period, what is maybe a modern equivalent to not initiate our sons, but in some sense help them transition from boy to man?
Good question. And rites of passage is something that I'm still thinking about exploring. What I've seen some churches do, and I like it, is that when their boys get to a certain age, 10, 11, 12, on the cups of the teenage years, a few of the men will get the boys together and they will set up a fire somewhere in the bush, and they'll have a journey that the boys go on, where they set the men up at certain stations. And as the boys reach these men, they sit down and they have a discussion around certain topics of what it means to be a man. So you might have a couple of men here with 3 or 4 boys, have that discussion on this topic. Then you walk up further and there's another discussion around another topic. And so they have a social night where they actually take the boys on a journey, and then they arrive at the fire and sit around and just be men. But there's those conversations about what it means to be a man along the way. And so some churches are doing that and almost taking that as some sort of initiation of saying to the boys, well, you're about to become a man, and here's some advice I'd like to give you. And yeah, that's working really well. Some churches are doing that. So, yes.
On that topic, a few years ago, or a lot of years ago actually, I went to a program put on by LL, just south of Sydney, and it was called Initiated, specifically teaching people how to initiate their either boys or girls. It was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. And I would love it if our church did something similar. It was not our church that did it, they ran it. Yep. So it was by LL.
So maybe something that some of your church start to think about. And maybe if it can't be done in a smaller church, you might get 2 or 3 of a church together to do something like that with your men. But yeah, thank you for the testimony and the powerful effect it is, and helping our boys discover who they are. Somewhere else?
Yeah, just have a observation maybe that kind of ties back to both of those comments. And that is that I think there are a lot of dads now who don't actually have those, I'll call them masculine skills, to actually pass on to their sons.
Yep.
My husband's masculine, but he wasn't taught, for example, he's not mechanically minded, he doesn't know how to fix up a car or... and even, the stuff that our daughter is doing now through Pathfinders is fantastic, but he's learning as we go. Like it's, and I think that's also something that a church, needs to consider, is that,
Good point.
This might be one of the only places left where, you can really teach people those skills that's so important to shaping their identity. And that's something that, we're very conscious of as a family. We're trying to look at, how we've got a son now too. He's only 3 at this point. Fixing his little toys is relatively simple. But it's going to get more complex, especially because we need to counter everything that society is throwing at us. And it's full on, and it's an attack every day in the opposite direction. So
you're right.
Yeah.
Good comments, good point. And my comment on that would be that that's where someone might need to go to the next generation. And that's where, again, a hobby club or some of those sorts of groups are where you can find those sorts of mentors as well. But yeah, I think we need to be more intentional than we have been in the past, because as you say, society definitely is intentional in what they're trying to communicate to our boys. And we need to, I think, as a church, step up in this space for our young men.
Just an anecdote on the topic of the initiation. There was a dad in our local church, had a burden for his young upcoming men, and so he organised at appropriate age for each individual son to have such a journey as that. He gathered around him a bunch of men from within the context of church. Yep. He had a book he was using, which I have no idea the title of, but he gave a different aspect of life as the specialty for each of the church men, and they did the physical journey that you've talked about and had opportunity to share. I know that my husband had the spiritual part of it, but it was very effective because it was an acted out set of counsel as opposed to a only sit down lecture type of...
Yeah, I love that idea. I love it. A friend of mine, and I know he's got 2 of his sisters are here, not that they're in the tent or not, but a friend of mine, Terry Lambert, I was talking to him recently at ministers' meetings, and his son Spencer has just got married. And before they got married, Terry and the son went on not just a walk, but a huge walk along the coast in West Australia somewhere. Took them a number of weeks to do it, and they had a break in the middle, I think. But yeah, Terry's wife Michelle would give them more food and things they needed at certain points along the way. But a father and son going on a walk together, a long walk before Spencer got married, I just think that was powerful. That was powerful. And Terry giving him words of advice along the way as they just journeyed together. Sometimes he went for days, didn't talk. We just walked. Other days we talked a lot, and often at night around the campfire we talked. But he said it was a journey of discovery, both for him and for his son, before he married his now wife. So I love that concept. There was Mike somewhere else. Yep.
Yeah, Daron, I was listening to all the 7 points that you made. I've got 4 boys, and they're all grown up and left home.
Yep.
Our relationship is very, can I say, 9 out of 10 is awesome because we do things together. But
yep.
I was doing it in...
Got another one to add? Got another point to add?
I was going to ask a question.
Yep.
Their feedback was, Dad, it's hard out there when other kids looked at us as we're too-gooders and we're not mixing with we're not blending with the rest. Yep. How can we deal with this kind of pressure that it's...
So it's pressure the boys that don't have the dads that's bringing other boys down. Yeah, and that's right. The peer group pressure for boys is absolutely enormous.
Yep.
But encouraging them to stand up and to be the person, not be the leader. Now, I know that's hard at times, but to stand up and be the leader and lead these other boys that are obviously horsing around and searching for their identity because of the fact they haven't had the men, encouraging them to say, hey, step up and be that mentor, that peer mentor. There's a huge lot of work around peer mentoring as well. And we can build those boys up to be those peer mentors in those spaces as well. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And especially in Australia, there's the idea of natural shaming between boys and not allowing one to get ahead and bringing them all down to the same level is the tall poppy syndrome is very much in boys at this age as well, and wanting to tear each other down with some few words and things. So it's not easy, but that's where maintaining that constant relationship with your son and talking them through that and even having that discussion around it, it shows that you're aware of it. Just having that discussion is powerful. So, and encourage them to be a leader and to be an example and to walk away, have the fortitude to walk away when something wrong is happening they don't want to be involved in, is something that you need to keep having with them. Andrew knew. Andrew had a mobile phone, as I said, in year 10, and when he went out with his mates, he knew that if something was going wrong, he wanted to be there. He said, send me a symbol on the phone, an X. You don't have to say anything else, an X. And I knew that was my signal as a dad to create an excuse, an emergency, or some reason why Andrew had to be picked up and brought home. So he knew that any time he sent me that X, I'll go and invent I'll bring him back, I'll invent an excuse and say, I've got to come get your son, this has happened. Might be just the chooks died or the fox got in or whatever, but there was also an emergency, and Andrew could say, there's a family emergency, my dad's coming to get me. That gave him an out. So being able to give your kids some way of when they know things are going bad and they don't want to talk about it, but they can at least send home a signal, and you as a parent create the excuse to remove them from that. And that's parenting 101, in my opinion, to be able to provide that out for them. So, and my daughter has a son, by the way. She knows if she sends me a certain, even now, she's not quite got a license, but if she sends me the same symbols, then I'll create a reason why I need to go and pick her up. And I'll wear the blame from the other kids. I'll be the parent. And Andrew still saves space, or Madison. So, yeah, that's what I did when they were growing through those 10 years. Yep.
Thanks for that. That was a good tip. I'm a single parent to 2 boys, almost 13 and 14.
Yep.
And I'm so grateful for the opportunities that just come at the right time and the right people. They know who they are. But yeah, sheep shearing. We're in the middle of sheep country, and we were given the opportunity to let them do a day of rouseabout.
Awesome.
And they had the best time. They were completely involved in the whole process. And
Yep.
the 14-year-old's taken 2 years earlier than normal to go on a camp to learn to actually be a shearer. So just in their spare time, and they said they had the best time of their life.
Yep.
You know, it was that
I love
manly
that story, and that's what I call the country advantage. And South Wales is mainly country, and I grew up in the country, and I'm so thankful now I did, because it's a different. I think we grow better men in the country. That's my opinion. I might be biased, but I think we grow better men in the country. I grew up on a farm. I was driving a tractor at the age of 7 because, well, the other men were picking up the fruits and the grapes. And so, Daron, here's a accelerator, here's a brake, here's a steering wheel. There's a brake bonds here, brake bonds there, you steer down the middle. So, and back then when I went to get my licence, because I knew that you grew up on a farm, back then it was drive around the block, yep, you're right, off you go. Because I knew that you grew up on a farm, so yeah. So good story.
Just one question. When do you give them a chainsaw?
Pardon?
When do you give them a chainsaw to use?
Chainsaw? Yeah, my son, I've got 2 chainsaws and we've got an open fire, so he was alongside me. He had a smaller version of mine, but we were chainsawing. He was probably about 9 or 10, and we did it together, and he was supervised, and we had a good lecture around what that blade does and the potential. But no, he supervised access with the chainsaw. He was fine. He was fine. We did it together. So. Yeah. But yeah, that's again a parenting decision you need to make when that occurs, and you know your kids, and yeah, they need to take chainsaws very seriously. But I felt Andrew was ready, and he never cut anything off, thank goodness. But yeah, apart from the branches. But yeah, when I was 7, and now you don't do it today because you're not allowed to do it. But when I was 7, I got that axe, that tomahawk. First thing I did was walk down and cut a tree down, and built a jetty on the river. We grew up on the Murray River, so yeah, built a jetty. Yeah, cut trees down and built a jetty. Now, again, I felt like I was turning into a man because I was able to now chop a tree down. So, yeah. Over here.
Yeah. Hi, Daron. There's a lot of social media and mainstream media around toxic masculinity these days, and
yep.
I guess the feminisation of Western culture. When I look at what genuine masculinity is, it's generally about providing and protecting your people.
Yep.
And so there's a couple of books that I've read that have really helped shape that. One is Wild at Heart, which was given to me.
A good book.
When I was baptised. And another one a good Baptist friend of mine gave me was No More Christian Nice Guy.
Ah.
Which is interesting.
I haven't read that one. I'll put it on my to-do list.
Well, and look, there's many examples of where Jesus wasn't nice, but he was good. He did.
Yep.
And he represented his people, and he, overturned the tables in the sanctuary.
There is a rugged Jesus. We've often feminised him, but
he
was a rugged Jesus.
What's important, and that's something that our boys really need to hear and feel, and how to go about that in a genuine masculine way. So, have you got any thoughts? Have you got any recommendations of books apart from the little ones that you've written on that website?
Yeah. There's a few books. Steve Biddulph's books are good around those ones, and they're old classics, but they've been redone recently. But he talks some of that stuff. He said that providing a good father figure is one of the most important things we can do. But yeah, I love your idea around. Often we prevent. And I think it was you said to me yesterday that sometimes Christianity sees whole weak men and weak people, and you're a fairly new Christian, and yeah, so that's often not attractive, especially to our boys. And remember, my stats show that more boys are leaving than girls when it comes to our kids leaving, and maybe it's because we don't present the Jesus who showed indignant, righteous anger at times, and yeah, overturned the tails when he had to. told the Pharisees where to get off when he had to, and those sorts of things. And yeah, very good point. But yeah, some of those books you recommended, and if you go to your bookstores, you'll find some good ones there that talk about some of these men now that are writing these books to try and kick back against what social media is throwing at us and what feminisation. And there's nothing wrong with appropriate feminisation, but sometimes radical feminisation takes it too far. And there's now some good kickback to that. And if we don't provide the kickback, as I said earlier, Andrew Tate and some of those other influences fill that gap, and not so pleasant as well. So I remember when I was a kid as well, it wasn't just a teenage book, it was also a book I got on in there, how to skin a rabbit and how to do these, like a whole lot of things of how to do things and ideas, and how to keep pigeons, how to keep chooks, how to round up sheep, whatever. But there was a book that, I can't remember what it's called, but it had all these different activities that boys could do, and Dad and Mum gave me that as well when I was a young kid, and I really enjoyed just reading in there some of those, and they had some of the stories of people that had done those things, and those stories really spoke to me as well. That's probably why I went and got some ferrets and kept ferrets, because I thought it was a pretty cool thing to do.
We have time for one more question. Any more questions?
Anybody else? It is time to go, but tomorrow we'll have some more time. Tomorrow I'm going to do the opposite and go to our girls. So we'll do the same discussion around girls, and then hopefully more time for questions, and then that's our last session.